It went after the 14-year-old boy and killed him and ate him and did left the 40 goats. Because once it becomes a man killer, it's very comfortable. Now, I want to read you some numbers here. So human-leopard conflict, you see this? Humans and leopards are more in conflict than any of those other animals. Lions, there are man-eating lions. That's true. But it's not like natural. It says the minute leopards get hungry, they'll go get a human being to eat. No problem. It's not like... And it says that if you try to... so what are you going to do with it? And in India, these laws, because of Avodah Zarah and so on, that they worship the leopards. So they say, you can't, unlike halacha, that once an animal has eaten a human being, they're put to death, like we know, like Shor HaNiskal, etc. The Mishnah says that even a chicken was put to death because it attacked a baby and killed a baby. It was stoned. All right, it needs a court process, but you kill him. And then Rabbi Lazar says, no, if an animal kills a human being, the first person who kills it gets rewarded. That's what he says. Kol hakodem zocha. Yeah. So they're afforded the highest legal protection under the Wildlife Protection Act of India, and man-eaters can only be killed when they continue to prey on human. You hear this? Even if they ate a human being, so they ate a human being, big deal. A leopard, though, is more chashuv than a human being. Don't kill the leopard unless you think he's going to kill more people.
This is in India? India?
In Uttarakhand, the province of India, the state with the most severe human-leopard conflict, 45 leopards were legally declared man-eaters and shot by wildlife officials between 2001 and 2010, lest you think that this is an old story. Now, on the Indian subcontinent, from the years 1875 to 1912, how many deaths were attributed to leopards, human deaths? 11,909.
11,000.
And that's up to 1912. Now, lest you think, it's no longer, in this Uttarakhand province, from 2000 to 2007, 239 deaths. Okay? And 15 in one province between 210 in Nepal and 212. These guys have no problem taking on human beings. And why? They run very fast. They can run up to 37 miles an hour. They can jump 20 feet horizontally and almost 10 feet high. They have a stronger developed smell than tigers. They are strong climbers, can go down a tree head first. And man-eating leopards, listen, this is not my words, have earned a reputation as being particularly bold and difficult to track. Torah knows what it's talking about. Nothing's changed. Most of them are girls, by the way. No. Sorry. No, the other way around. Well, they're all males. They're all males. Yeah. Mature males. 80% are mature males.
Oh, in the man-eater ones?
In the man-eater ones. So a namer has no problem busting in. Oh, it says that it'll bust into the human. How do people live out in those primitive areas? They live in huts. It'll just bash through the hut and take people away. Yep. And you start when the British came to India, so they had fancy guns, and they went hunting for these. There were these legendary leopards that ate hundreds, and then they would go after them, for the sport, and also to do a mitzvah, I guess, of getting rid of them. I don't know if I took that, but you hear the famous man-eaters, okay? The leopard of Panar. The leopard of Panar was a male leopard reported as being responsible for at least 400 fatal attacks on humans in the Panar region in Kuaman, northern India. In the 20th century, not a long time ago, Jim Corbett heard of the leopard while hunting the Champawat tiger. In 1907, 1910, he set out to kill it. Although it claimed hundreds more lives, right? The Panar man-eater received less attention, which Corbett attributed to the remoteness. It was so far away. But he went out and he actually killed it. He killed it with a corpse in its mouth.
Wow. With the corpse in his mouth. In the midst of eating a person.
Oh, actually, no, that was a different one. But this is the Panar leopard. Here's this guy. He was a British. Anyway, so, Azkanamer. It means simply going to the places where you don't belong and pushing your way in. Now, there's something called Azut de Kedusha. Azut de Kedusha. And in the thinking of the Rambam, what's the greatest way to use a midah? If somebody is an Azuz Panim, what do you do with that person? According to the Rambam, which is really Aristotelian influence. You can go to the opposite extreme and you end up where? In the middle. The idea is to be in the middle. So you're not a big Azuz Panim, you're a little Azuz Panim. Rabbi Nachman, and I think mirrored in the Gemara, has a different approach. He says it's not that you try to calm down the midah and tone it down. You redirect it. So like the Gemara says, somebody's born in the mazel of Ma'adim, you're born in the month of bloodshed, become a butcher. The guy loves killing. So what are you going to do to the guy? What are you going to do? Turn him into an accountant? He's not going to be an accountant. Okay?
He's not a good one.
Maybe a lawyer. No comment. But or a politician. But not a got to be a sheikhet. So listen to Rav Nachman here about Azuz Panim versus Azuz or Moil. Yeah. I said a Moil. A Moil, exactly. Although that could be dangerous. You know what? By Pesach Kron, I'm sorry, I have to tell a joke because it's Adar. You know what the worst thing you can possibly say at a bris? What's the one thing? I heard this from Pesach Kron. He says, what's the worst thing you can possibly say at a bris? Oops.
Pesach Kron is a very famous Moel.
Very famous Moel. So here's what Rabbi Nachman says about Azuz Panim. It says, Ein lo chelik b'Torah. The Gemara Chagiga Yudalad says that there were 1,000 generations Hashem wanted to give the Torah to, but he had to do it he curtailed it to 26 generations, because for the 1,000 generations prior, there was nobody to talk to. So it says, Azuz Panim ein bichlal Kabbalah Satorah. Okay? That represents, he said, the 974 generations that couldn't even come close to Torah. So it's really, really bad.
Was Abraham a good example of Azuz de Kedusha?
Definitely. Because what did he do? He stood up to Nimrod.
And the
Stood up with
whole,
his father.
lady.
Stood up to everybody. That's really the Azuz Kedusha. And he also, he's the ultimate Azuz Kedusha. He goes to Akash Baruch Hu and asks him to spare Sodom. It's outrageous. The most wicked people in the world. And he gives Hashem an argument. And that's the difference between Avram and Noach. Because Noach didn't argue. He didn't have the Azuz, the Kedusha. He had Azuz to be within his boundary the best that he could be. But to break in with chutzpah, it's chutzpah. To go, but it's chutzpah l'shem shamayim. Chutzpah l'shem shamayim is Azuz the Kedusha. Chutzpah. And then he says, now he says, so if it's so bad, Azus, it's like the worst of the worst. Nimsa she'azus panim ein lo chelik b'Torah. It's the worst of the worst. Kimochein, but says Rabbi Nachman, similarly, mishehu ish shafel v'nizveh, a person who's downtrodden and beaten, ve'ein bo shum azus de kedusha, ein lo gam kein chelik b'Torah. Wow, that's a very radical statement. Because if you go with the more Aristotelian, Maimonidean approach, you're supposed to take your azus and modify it, negate it. He says, no, you've got to have a measure of azus. And that really explains the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. On the one hand, have a az kanamer, for what? Lavo, to serve Hashem. You have to be bold. You have to be willing to go invade places. You have to be fearless. You have to be willing to break down walls. And that's exactly how Rav Nachman defines Azuz the Kedusha. This is Torah Kuf Mem Zayin, by the way, in the first volume. 147. Torah 147 in the first volume of Likutei Maran from Menachem and Blesav. This is what he says. Because there's a pasuk that says in Tehillim, Tenu Oz Lelokim, Tehillim Sameches, Tenu Oz Lelokim. Give your Azuz to Hashem. El Yisrael Shehu Nosein Oz V'Tatzumos La'am. Kel Yisrael. The God who gives us power. Tenu Oz Lelokim. That's our input. And then Hashem will give us back a measure of Kedusha. Reb Nachman goes on to say here, it gives power to Hashem. If we're audacious, then Hashem will activate, how shall I say, Kaviyachol, his audaciousness on our behalf. So then, Akel Yisrael, no Saint Oz v'Tatzumasam. Go and start being an Azuz the Kedusha. Hashem will give you more power, right? And this is against the Sitra Achra, the other side, which is called what? Azuz Ponim. Azuz Ponim. She'i Efshar la'amod kinegdam ki imai de Azuz the Kedusha. He says he is a theme in Reb Nachman. He says, unfortunately, and we know this all too well, Jewish leaders, if they are not aligned with Torah, particularly, can be very, very brazen and very powerful and very influential, right? But they're not leading people down a path to bring them closer to Hashem. They have whatever other agenda they want. So that's called the leaders of the Jewish people, and the real leader, I mean real leaders with influence and power and finances and backing and, you know, that's called azpanim. And the idea of an azuz to kedusha, he says, yilevatel hamonim mitoraso vavodaso. This is what it means: that you break the barriers that are keeping you from your serving of Hashem, from learning, from davening, from doing mitzvos. There are barriers, whatever they are, emotional, physical, financial, emotional, whatever it is. Whatever the barrier is, you got to break the barrier down and do it anyway. That's called Azuz to Kedusha. Now, an example of this, I saw a very nice Dvar Torah by a fellow named Rabbi Nechemia Ra'anan. I'll mention him. He wanted to say that that's why Korach and his group were told to put their ketoras onto what type of pan? Made out of what? Nechoshes. Because what were they trying to do? They were trying to break into the leadership. So he asked the question, then why was it used as a covering for the Mizbeach? What happened? Korach and his 250 whatever cohorts, maybe more, put Ketores on a pan of Nechoshes copper, and they all die. Some of them get swallowed up in the earth. The 250 people that he brought along were all consumed by an inner fire, much like who? Much like who? Their bodies were intact, but their inwards were singed. Who died that way? Nadav and Avihu. Why? Nadav and Avihu again. What was their azus? They broke beyond the boundaries, right? And that's why Chazal say they didn't ask the Shilas and Moshe Aaron. They said, when are we going to get rid of all these old guys? They wanted to break into the leadership position prematurely.
So was leadership they were after? I thought it was just they were had a strong need to serve Hashem in a more intense way and disregarded the rules.
And so did Korach. And that's why both of them, both of their remnants of that act are used for Kedusha. Right?
So part of his, even Korach, part of his intention was
Yes.
Kodesh.
It had part Azus to Kedusha and part Azus Panim. And that's what
And one of the
that
things I
went wrong.
read was that Korach was jealous of the beautiful garments that the Kohen Gadol got to wear.
And now bring us to what those beautiful garments represent. Okay? Okay? We're going to talk about that right now. So what did we see? We see that in Moshe the absence of Moshe represents just the opposite of this. He didn't want to be pushing himself into the role of Kohen. In his argument with Hashem, by the sneh, he said, Shlach na bi'at tishlach. I do not want my brother's position. And what that does is that fixed the original problem between the first two brothers. What was the original problem with the first two brothers? Jealousy.
He wanted like he had the sown, the animal.
What was the carbon of Hevel and what was the carbon of Cain?
One was nice and
One was nice, one was eh. What was the nice one made out of? A sheep. What do we get from sheep? Wool. The other one was fruit. What's the worst, cheapest fruit that exists? You get it on your salad at Holy Bagel. Flax seeds. You can also make a shirt out of it if you want, or a linen suit.
Linen.
It's edible, wearable at the same time. It is. It is. Linen. It's the lowest. The Mishnah tells us if you say to somebody, I'm going to sell you 100 pounds of fruit, and you deliver him flax seeds, the deal is legitimate because flax is still part of fruit. Okay? It's not beans, it's not kitnios, but it's fruit. But it's the lowest fruit. So now, Medrash tells us that this is the secret behind shatnez, which was the primary component of the clothing of the Kohen Gadol.
Which I don't understand why they were shot to it.
So here's an explanation, okay? Listen to this. Cain and Hevel represent fratricide, the murder of brothers, based on bad midos, jealousy, hatred, violence, shedding blood. I mean, it's just representative of what was going on inside, right? Who's going to fix that? Adam said, okay, we're all going to get back on track to Gan Eden. Let's all bring a carbon. They were nowhere near. The Cain was influenced by the Nachash, the quote-unquote affair between the Nachash and Chava is what led to the birth of Cain. Cain is more the son of the Nachash than he is of Adam. Hevel's kid, Adam's kid was a good kid, Hevel. Gilgal will be a Moshe Rabbeinu, the future of mankind. But the Nachash gets in there, and he also has his representative, and that's Cain. And Cain unfortunately, represents that Azus de Panim, Azus Panim. And he didn't want his brother to be equal to him or exceed him. Where do the brothers finally make peace? Which two brothers really show, not that they're going to kill each other, but they'll kill themselves for the other? Moshe and Aaron.
Killed himself.
Yosef was still a problem. They still tried to kill Yosef. It gets fixed where? You're right? By Binyamin and Yehuda. Yeah. That's the fixing, but it's still messy, and we still pay for that chet of Mechiras Yosef. But the next generation, after Yosef and his brothers,
What about Menashe and Ephraim?
And Binyamin and
Menashe and Ephraim also did not protest. Yosef still protested. Why are you putting him in front of him? But Menashe and Ephraim didn't protest. But Aaron and Moshe were happy for each other. Aaron was happy for Moshe that he would be the Navi and the teacher of Torah, and Moshe wanted no part of being the Kohen, the leader of the people. And I think that's the pshat, why Moshe's name is absent from Parshas Tetzaveh, which is the moment of glory of who? Aaron. It's the self-negation out of love for his brother. So it's not just because he said, by Cheda Egel, Mecheni Nami Sifrecha. Go further. He said, I love Klal Yisrael so much, erase me. I love my brother so much, erase me. Okay? And that's fixing the sin of Cain and Hevel, where Moshe was there anyway in the form of Hevel. And that's why the Kohen wears shatnez, because shatnez, those two karbanos finally coming together, Cain and Hevel. Cain, who brought the flax seeds, of which we make linen, and Hevel, which brought the sheep, from which we bring wool. They finally come together. And in fact, in the Big Day Kahuna, we add one strand of Zahav, which is representing all those holy kalim that we mentioned earlier, right?
Is the reason
What?
that the general population is forbidden from wearing articles that have
Shatnez.
Is it just to keep in our awareness
Yes.
of the importance of that issue?
Yes, yes. You have to be on the level of an Aaron HaKohen or his assistant Kohanim. They had a belt that was, you know how long? The longest belt in history, a sash.
Yeah.
32 amos. You know how big that is? An am is a foot and a half. Do the math. We're talking about what? A 60-foot belt?
Was it so they couldn't bend that?
They couldn't bend over, right? It was because it really covered their heart and their stomach, if you want to think about it, up to their heart, here and stomach, meaning that they're inward. They're 32 spells what? Leiv. It's the first and last letters of the Torah. Their hearts have to be in the right place. And with this we'll conclude, what were the things that these begadim that incorporated the shatnez were meant to be role models for? The Gemara tells us in Zvachim Peiches, what would the garments represent? It's connected in Parshas Tzav, the garments, to the karbanos. It says they're also like karbanos. They bring kapara. What is kapara? Forgiveness. Ketones mechaperes al shvichos dam. The ketones is what they dipped the blood of Yosef, right? Vayishchetu seir izim vayitbelu es haktones. They tried to mitigate the sin of Yosef by dipping it in blood and saying, you know, we're justified in hating him. He's a bloodshedder. He's like an Esav, an Ezim. This is teaching us no. That's the incorrect approach. And also, Michnasayim is modesty against Gilui Arayos. And also, Mitznefes, the turban, atones for those who are Gasei Ruach, who are Grabyan, Grabyan, you know what it means? That they're uncultured, lack manners and consideration. But there's one final thing called the tzitz, among other things here. But the tzitz is mechaper on who? On Azus Metzach. What is Azus Metzach? The brazenness of sin. And instead, what do you put on it? Kodesh Lashem. That's the counterbalance to Azus, the Kedusha. And the Gemara says that when people who had that Azus, the not Kedusha, would see Aaron, they would melt. They would see the tzitz, and they would do tshuva. That's what Aaron holds. And therefore, when an inadvertent killer, is in Ir Miklat, and the Kohen Gadol dies, he goes free. Why? Because the Kohen Gadol is the guy who's been representing to him all of the good midos, and now, if he's finished his term, that means he's incorporated the lessons of that Kohen Gadol in his lifetime, and now he's ready to graduate. So, this is what we see. So the last thing is, very last thing, this is a bonus. The spice that Aaron offers, one of them is called the Torah Shecheles, but it's also called Tziporen. So Chazal Agazar says Tziporen is a what? A nail. By the way, you're supposed to cut your nails, if you're not growing them long, like women grow them long, but nails are supposed to be cut in honor of Shabbos. It reminds us of the bodies of Adam and Chava before they sinned. This is what we looked like. We were translucent beings. The last remnant of Adam, Harishon, and Chava that we have is our nails, which is why they're supposed to be kept nicely, whatever.
Our whole bodies were like that?
Yeah, our whole bodies were like that.
Why are we not
They shone. Now, it's very interesting that it says in the spice called Shecheles or Tziporen, Chazal tell us, it's in your siddur, you say it every day in Parshas Ketores, that they used to use Yayin Kafrisin, wine from Cyprus, to make it Aza, to make it bold. Bold. The bold Tziporen is the key spice of the Ketores, which is meant to conquer evil, which means we want to be like Adam, but with the boldness of what? Not the Nachash, but the boldness of Adam, which is for Kedusha. Okay, that's my little bonus there. And that brings us to a little bit the deeper understanding of what's going on here. And just to say that the Hester Panim of Adar, then connecting to Esther, is about negating yourself in favor of somebody else, which is what's Lech Knos Kol HaYehudim. So there's Hester Panim doesn't only mean God is absent, but God is modeling for us what we need to do in order to be forgiven, right? Which is Lech Knos Kol HaYehudim. Get all the Jews together, get all the tribes together, because if all the tribes are not together, then the message of Aaron has not penetrated, and ultimately, that's the only thing that's going to hold Klal Yisrael together. Very appropriate this time of year. Very appropriate for what's going on in Israel with elections. Very appropriate what's going on with impending peace plans. Ultimately, what we need to do, and Iran, is Lech Knos Kol HaYehudim, get together, do tshuva, and daven. Because there is so much going on. Let's get together, do tshuva, and daven. Okay, that's it.
Thank you,
Also,
Rabbi.
let you know